We'll call this meeting of Lima City Council to order. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the invocation by Councilor Adams, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, we ask for your guidance and direction as we come together this evening. Grant us the strength to manage the challenges ahead and the wisdom to identify these as opportunities as we strive to serve the citizens of the city of Lima. As we make decisions on behalf of the city, grant us the gift of an open mind, the willingness to learn, and the humility to accept the ideas of others. Please help us to recognize diversity as a blessing and unity as our strength. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nieper.
Here.
Mr. McLean. Mr. Lowe.
Here.
Mr. Tevin.
Here.
Miss Adams.
Here.
Mr. Glenn.
Here.
Miss Townsend.
Here.
And Mr. Nixon.
Here. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we add ordinance 14413 to the agenda, to tonight's agenda, that resolution 813 be brought to the head of the agenda tonight, and that Gina Chiapazzi be added to privilege of the floor regarding Lima Land comedy.
Second.
The motion and the second is to amend tonight's agenda by adding ordinance 14413, by moving resolution 813 to the beginning of the meeting, and by adding Gina Chiapazzi to the privilege of the floor. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Resolution 813.
Memorializing the late Terry W. Webb, outstanding Lima citizen, and extending condolences to his family on behalf of the Lima City Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that Resolution 813 be passed on its first reading after having been read.
Second.
The motion and the second is to adopt Resolution 813 on its first reading after having been read. We'll have the clerk read.
Whereas, on June the 8th, 2013, the entire Lima Land community was saddened by the untimely death of Terry W. Webb, former Lima City Parks Director, Recreation and Forestry Division, an outstanding citizen. And whereas Terry was born and grew up in Lima, graduated from Lima Central Catholic High School, and later secured 3 degrees from the University of Cincinnati, the University of Kentucky, and the National University of Health Sciences. And whereas Terry taught science for 14 years at Notre Dame Academy in Park Hills, Kentucky, before returning to Lima as principal for St. Charles Catholic School, and later holding the position of Lima City Parks Director, Recreation and Forestry Division from 2002 to 2006. And whereas Terry left his position with the city to pursue a lifelong dream of becoming a medical professional, secured a doctorate in chiropractic medicine with a specialty in acupuncture, and returned to Lima to serve the poor individuals and families at the 8th Street Clinic of Health Partners of Western Ohio. And whereas it is the desire of this council to recognize the passion, vitality, humor, and energetic contributions of Terry W. Webb to the city of Lima and its citizens. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Lima, Ohio, a majority of the members elected thereto concurring, that the council of the city of Lima hereby acknowledges the many contributions of Terry W. Webb as principal for St. Charles Catholic Schools, City Parks Director, Recreation and Forestry Division, chiropractic doctor, and outstanding citizen of the city of Lima.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I had made the motion requesting this resolution for Terry at one of our previous council meetings. It takes many people to make up a community, and it takes all different kinds of people. And we have people who are involved, people who think of their community, and Terry was one of those individuals. Terry was a great guy, and I can remember when our youngest son attended St. Charles, Terry was the principal. My wife would drive our son to school, And Terry was there to greet those kids every day, welcoming them. He did a fantastic job running the school and making those kids feel good about themselves. Terry had an infectious smile, just a great personality. Then I had the pleasure of working with Terry when he was with the city. And I was really, at first, so amazed when he decided to leave and go back to school. And I thought, you know, at his age in life to undertake something like that, he just had a drive and a passion. But I think that the passion was to help others. And we are really going to miss Terry in our community. He meant a lot to the city of Lima. And the city of Lima and its residents meant a lot to Terry. So I appreciate the fact that City Council is recognizing Terry this evening, and I personally will think of him many, many times in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tevin. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
my first time on council, I was appointed, and one of the issues that I was asked to address by the residents was the restroom in Cook Park. Had many conversations with Terry, and it was a cold, rainy day. We had set up a meeting to meet at Cook Park. And when he arrived, he was energetic, he was informative, enthused, showed me a booklet, a notebook that he was looking at grants, things, for this issue. And I was sorry also to see him leave. I understand, as I had a father that seemed to always be striving for something. They're just multi-talented. And he was missed, and I think with the news recently of Cook Park getting the restroom, I think he would be so pleased, as it was a passion of his when I met with him a number of years ago. So I will always think of him, and appreciated his input and his leadership also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Glenn?
Mr. President, well, I can spend an hour to talk about Terry. Ms. Adams and Mr. Tevin said a lot, but he meant a lot to me, and he meant a lot to the 6th Ward. Anytime I asked Terry, and Terry never said no, but he would help find a way and a solution, what we can do to make that park better, and what the future gonna lay. And like Ms. Adams say, Terry was good at saying we can find this deal, we can look for that. And when I seen him, when he got back in town, and our pastor always tell us, let people know when they're doing good. Don't wait till memorial service. I went over there and hugged him, but I didn't know he was in town yet. And he was so happy. I mean, and I know he was a loving father and loving husband, and but he was a great guy. And when I seen him, I mean, me and him gave each other a hug. And I'm saying, I'm glad you're back, though. Like Tom said, though, going to college, I said, you gonna be ready for it? He said, yeah, this is something I want to do. And he always smiling, always smiling. And when I heard the news, it shook me up, because he was a friend. He was a city worker, and anything he can do, he was gonna help. And I mean, I can call him, and he come out about and put things together, and he gonna make you feel good. When you walk away, if it ain't right, if something you don't like, he'll make you feel good, because the answer is gonna make you feel good about it. And I appreciate him so much, and I pray for the family that you hold up on these times. But he's in a good place, though. Just remind you, in a good place. I was talking to my wife about it, that good people like that, and he was great. I had an opportunity to meet a great man. And like you say, when you see the kids, he smiled with the kids. And, he put himself like a little kid. Like, you're a principal at the school now, you're bringing this back to the recreation department. I said, one day he's not going to be upset with me, nothing. He never got upset. We always talked and worked on putting things together, and I appreciate it so much. and he's going to be missed in Lima. We lost a good trailblazer there, even though he was still here in the Lima area working in Health Partnership, but he was still a part of our lives here in the city of Lima. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Is there any further discussion?
Mr.
Nieper?
Chair. I was fortunate to work with Terry for a number of years on the Star Spangled Spectacular, and you talk about someone who really never thought of themselves. I remember the first year after, like this year, a lot of rain, we finally got the event done and fireworks shot, and it was early in the hours of the 5th, and one of the guys had brought out a birthday cookie for me because my birthday's on the 5th, and while we're sitting there talking, Terry kind of brought up that his birthday was on the 4th, and no one ever knew that Terry's birthday was on the 4th. Here he had worked the whole day and never had really brought that up. I mean, he was such a soft-spoken man, and he really, you look through his career and all the jobs he held, it was really about service with Terry. And kind of coming full circle, I remember about 4 o'clock on the 4th this year when Rick Stolley and I were trying to get out of a torrential downpour from the middle of the park. And Rick kind of looked at me and he said, I bet Terry's kind of smiling at us right now, kind of laughing at us right now as we're soaking wet because he had to deal with it, for those years. And, the thing is, I think Terry was really involved in this year's event because about 6:30 in the evening, the clouds cleared, the rain passed by, and we were able to entertain folks and show the fireworks. And I know Terry was looking down from up above and helping us out with that. So he will be missed by this community and missed by all those who know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nieper. Is there any further discussion? I'm just going to say that I had the pleasure of working with him when he was in the Parks Department. I guess a lot of nice things have been said about him, but I'm not going to copy those things. But I will say this, that whenever there was a suggestion or a problem, Terry was one of the people that never said, we can't do that. He said, let me see what it takes to get that done. And it might not happen overnight, but he would always be working on, as Teresa mentioned, the restroom in Cook Park. It was never, well, we can't do that or we don't have the money. It was, let me find out what we've got to do to get that done. It was a can-do attitude, along with the infectious smile. You just couldn't run into him without walking away with a smile. So he will be missed, and the loss is to the entire community. I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Miss Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Miss Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes?
Mr. Nieper.
Yes.
Mr. McLean? Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
And Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Resolution 813 has been adopted on its first reading by a 7-0 vote. I believe his mother is here. If you'll come forward, I'll present you the resolution. Under privilege of the floor, we have Gina Chiapazzi. I hope I did not say the name wrong. You can come forward and state your name and address for the record, and I'll remind you, council rules permit 3 minutes.
Okay.
For privilege of the floor.
My name's Gina Chapazzi, 400 South Moomaw Road, 31.
Thank you.
And today I wanted to talk to you guys about, I would like to propose making July 17th, which is Phil Stiller's birthday, a citywide day. And there's a few reasons. I wrote a little something. As of 2011, Norfolk, Nebraska, the hometown of Johnny Carson, had a population of just 24,251. That's well below the population here in Lima, Ohio. In 2010, the Johnny Carson Comedy Festival Incorporated brought in $134,801. Imagine if Lima could generate that much money in 4 days. What kind of improvements could we make to the city? How much could local businesses generate from the tourists and from visitors? Lima can also honor a great comedian. Just like Johnny Carson, Phyllis Diller was a trailblazer in her own right, not only for women, since she was the first real female comedian, but for anyone who wants to chase their dreams. As a Lima native, we should be honoring her legacy and taking pride in the fact that one of the great ones was born right here. I am proposing that we start by having July 17th become Phyllis Diller Day. Once we establish Phyllis Diller Day, it can be expanded into a weekend and can eventually be as successful as the Johnny Carson Great American Comedy Festival. At Lima Lane Comedy, we're proud of Lima and its rich history. That's why we created Lima Lane Comedy and the all-female comedy competition, Lima's Funniest Lady. We want to help the people of Lima remember just how great the place is that they live in. By starting with giving Phyllis Diller her own day, we can make this a reality and set the building blocks to make a lucrative endeavor for the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure there's any action we can take on it tonight, but we will consider it in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The consent calendar,
Mr. President,
Ms. Townsend.
I move that items B, C, D, and E of the consent calendar be received and approved, and item A be received and filed, and item A be received, filed, and approved.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file items B, C, D, and E, and to receive, file, and approve item A. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 1.
From the Director of Community Development requesting real estate tax assessments for property maintenance code charges.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that communication number 1 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 1. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 2.
From the Director of Public Works requesting legislation to enter into a contract with Indiana and Ohio Railroad Company.
Mr. President,
Mr. Nieper.
I move that communication number 2 be received and filed. Authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation.
Second.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 2 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 3.
From the Directors of Finance and Utilities requesting legislation to enter into an electric service contract following competitive bidding for all of the city's electric supply.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that communication number 3 be received and filed, and the law director authorized to prepare the necessary legislation.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 3 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I'd like to ask the Director of Finance, Steve Cleaves, if he would come up and give a little further background on this, please.
Mr. Cleaves?
Mr. President and members of council, what has occurred this year is that the governor had introduced legislation which enables local governments to enter into a reverse auction for the bidding of electric power. Currently, the city of Lima has power bills in the $2 million range, and this new reverse auction bidding process is expected to allow us to save a considerable amount of money. Going forward, we could save upwards of $200,000 or more per year, which will enable us to use those savings in other critical areas throughout the city. I would add that a unique feature of the bidding process is when the low bid comes in, we are not obligated to accept that if we don't think it is a low enough price. So it's a no-lose proposition for us. But other cities and local governments who have entered into this process are showing significant savings, and we intend to do that also.
Mr. President,
Mr. Nieper?
just 2 quick questions. What's the term? Is that a variable as well, how long the term is?
When the bidding takes place, there will be bids at various terms. There will be 6 months, 12 months, 18, 24, and 36 months. And the city will have the opportunity to accept any or none of those bids.
Okay. And should we, should council, a future council, pass this along to the voters in terms of electrical or electric aggregation for the entire community? Would this preclude that from happening in the future?
There is an electric aggregation option for the residential users. I am not aware if this legislation for a reverse auction applies to residential users.
I just mean, should, in that case, okay, I got what I'm looking for, so.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaves.
Mr. Cleaves, okay. So now you've,
Sorry.
I just want to make sure. This is for us to do a reverse bid for the city of Lima as an entity's electrical supply.
That is correct.
This has nothing to do with electrical aggregation.
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay,
Okay.
very good. Thanks. The other is a subject I'm not interested in, so I just want to make sure that we weren't stepping into that territory. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 4.
From the Director of Community Development requesting legislation to contract continuing professional services through Scurrion Services.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that communication number 4 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 4. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 5.
Yes. From the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding a new permit to Dollar General.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that communication number 5 be received and filed, and the clerk be authorized to file with no objections to the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 5 and to authorize the clerk to notify the Ohio Division of Liquor Control of no objection. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 6.
From the Finance Director regarding appropriation amendments to the 2013 budget.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 6 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 6. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Reports of officials, Mr. Howard Elstro, Energy Savings.
Thank you. When we discuss energy savings, there's actually 2 phases of our efforts, we being the city, of how we conserve energy as well as contain cost. The first, I think you're probably fairly familiar with, as the Public Works Department has been making great strides in converting all of our systems to energy-efficient systems, using LEDs with our signals, our street lights. Now all of our parks and shelters have been converted over to energy-efficient systems. Throughout this building, Hall of Justice, the College Street Service Building, we have what they call T5 fluorescents, which are energy-efficient. And the parking garage has also been converted over to LED lighting. Additionally, we have upgraded the municipal building air handling systems to be energy efficient. The second part of cost containment when it comes to energy is exactly what you considered earlier, allowing us to go forward with procurement activities that will save us the cost of actually the energy that we do purchase. In a Mr. Cleese referred, it's sometimes called a reverse auction. What we are planning to do, Council is probably not aware that we have about 240 separate electric bills that come to the city of Lima. And we're not talking about residents here, so I'm glad you cleared that up, Mr. President. These are bills for such things as signals, as street lights, the buildings that we maintain, the pump stations that are out in the street. There are 240 bills that come to the city, or accounts. Of those accounts, 5 are what they call major accounts, and those are the huge energy consumers, such as the water supply system and the sewer treatment centers. What we plan to do is to go out to bid for 235, or the small accounts, before September, because they are coming due, and we either need to renew with AEP or go through this process with the assistance of a energy purchasing expert, which we've identified. Once we enter into contract with the final entity, EMEX, the advisor that we are using, will also monitor our bills to make sure we are getting the per kilowatt price that we have been quoted. And as Mr. Cleese has recited, we plan to save about 150 to at least probably 200,000, something in that order of annual reduction in our energy costs. Now, getting back to energy saving by managing our systems with hardware, the municipal building has now shown a 26% reduction in kilowatt usage. The parking garage now has shown a 20% reduction in kilowatt usage. That equates to a reduction of about 7,000 for this building and 3,000 for the other building. We can, by shopping, pare that price down for the kilowatt we actually pay for, that we pay. And there are certain charges that we cannot defray, and those are the transportation charges, which are forwarded by the American Electric Power. Those are set by the PUCO. So that portion of our bill we cannot reduce, nor the portion of street lighting that we lease from AEP. If councilors will recall, about 1/3 of the street light circuitry is maintained and owned by the city of Lima. 2/3 is on a leased basis from American Electric Power, and those fees are set by AEP, and those delivery charges are fixed. Just as a show and tell piece, I've brought one of the energy efficient fixtures that we are installing on the Market Bell Fountain entryway project. Again, this is technology that is state-of-the-art. What we have here is this obviously mounts on the pole, and there is a globe that is installed over the top of this apparatus. This is the LED light. So if you notice, you don't see a conventional light bulb. What you do see is these little dots that are centered around the middle of this fixture, and that is what illuminates our streets. So for the show and tell portion, do you want to hold this?
Yeah. Let's see who's going to hold this. Yeah. Tough it out, Tammy. You're good.
Close your eyes.
You tried that first?
You two may want to back up.
Have you tested this? Have you tested this with people around?
I heard earlier that it was tested by our electrical crews.
You may want to sit up here.
Yeah, I would.
Now, I
No
will,
offense to the electrical crews.
Gary, he needs an assistant.
I can help.
I will tell you that as I plug this in for demonstration purpose, please do not look directly at it.
Why?
Are we ready?
Oh, it's bright.
I hope you listen to me.
Kind of reminds reminds me of a song by Manfred Mann.
I bring that in, I do think it's pretty interesting. You know, this uses 65% less than our conventional light bulbs that we have used for 15, 20, 30 years. And when you look at that, it's pretty unassuming. The top and the bottom both are fluted so that heat is dissipated. The typical shortening of the life of any light bulb is because of heat. Heat breaks it down. And the great technological advances have been trying to figure out how to dissipate the amount of heat that LEDs do produce. The other portion that is kind of fascinating is, you know, as bright as it was, we don't want the light to go out. We don't want the light to go up. And through photometrics and use of prisms in the globe itself, these now have been technologically altered so that the light patterns on different portions of the street. There's a sidewalk side, and so there'll be the brightness just very close to the pole. We also want the light to be cast further out in the driving lanes, and therefore the prisms have been adjusted so that the driving lanes are illuminated. So it really is kind of a neat piece of technology, and I appreciate the ability to come and tell you what we're up to. Thanks.
Hold on. Mr. Nieper.
Just one quick question, Howard. The two phases, the third phase obviously would be working with AEP to, if at the very least we can't negotiate the rate that we're paying for that energy, to be able to change those two-thirds of streetlights that they do own over to LEDs. Have we made any progress on that, or are we in any ongoing discussions with AEP on how to transfer those over?
The mayor and myself actually have consistently and regularly meet with the AEP officials, and one of the continuing issues of discussion has been for them to convert their circuitry over to LEDs so that the costs are reduced on the two-thirds of those circuits. We do have Mr. Randy Payne, who is the governmental liaison for AEP. We just met with him last Monday, and again discussed our interest in them going before the PUCO and trying to get a new tariff that will reduce the cost of those leased lights that we do lease from them. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Glenn.
Yes, my question was the same thing, asking how could we work out a deal with them? Do we still got to keep their lease? I mean, can we use that system on their pole? We'll be able to use that.
No, we cannot place our lights on their poles.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Again, the way they have their various tariffs set up, they do recover the cost of their lines, their transmission, as well as the poles that we lease from them, as well as the lights. But to date, there is no tariff that has been established for them to supply cities with LED lighting, and that's what we think is due. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
that helped, Howard, because when I was driving to City Council today, I was coming down Market Street, and I was looking at all the new lights, and they look great. And I was asking myself, okay, the other lights went up and over, and the light came down. How will these compare? But thank you for the demonstration.
Okay. Ordinances. Ordinance 14113.
Levying special assessments for property maintenance code charges on premises in the city of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that ordinance 14113 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 14113 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes, this will probably be a question for Howard also. I've had a couple people in the last 2 weeks, actually 3 individuals, have received letters for their property, and they were highly upset. And I tried to explain that we do have a program for individuals who have been fined for their first time. But their argument, and I do not believe that any of them knew each other, their argument was they're sending us a bill, but I can name you so many different other city properties where their maintenance
isn't being upheld. And could you explain, because I told them I would say something, and I want them to hear from administration. They're receiving bills knowing that we have property ourselves that's not being maintained right, and they want to know why. And I tried to explain labor, but if it could come from you, the reason why some of our properties have not been taken care of, but yet we choose to find other individuals. I guess what I'm saying is, take care of home first before we do this.
No. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, obviously, the city does take care of its properties. We are able to do that with our own forces, but also seasonal labor that we bring on. We also have other divisions responsible for code enforcement. So the fact that we hold people accountable is part of our jobs, at the same time that we're also working on keeping the city's own properties in good shape. It doesn't mean that all things are able to be done instantly. It takes time, and we work at it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper.
Yes.
Mr. McLean? Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
And Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ordinance 141-13 has been passed on its first reading by a 7-0 vote. Ordinance 142-13.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Spiriani.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that ordinance 142-13 be passed on its first reading.
Second?
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 142-13 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
No.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper.
Yes.
Mr. McLean? Mr. Lowe?
No.
And Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ordinance 142-13 will be placed on second reading, having failed to get the required 6 votes to pass it on its first reading. The vote total was 5-2. Ordinance 143-13.
Authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the St. John's Road Booster Station project.
Mr. President,
Ms. Townsend.
I move that ordinance 143-13 be passed on its first reading.
Second?
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 143-13 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper.
Yes.
Mr. McLean? Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ordinance 143-13 has been passed on its first reading by a 7-0 vote. Ordinance 144-13.
Amending the 2013 annual budget.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that ordinance 144-13 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 144-13 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Nieper.
Yes.
Mr. McLean? Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ordinance 144-13 has been passed on its first reading by a 7-0 vote. Miscellaneous business, Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few items this evening. First of all, Midway East Neighborhood Association will be meeting this Thursday, July 18th at 7 p.m. at their center at 727 East Kibbe. Also a reminder to the committee members and to the public of a meeting next week, July 22nd at 6 p.m. of the Community Economic Development Committee, where the subject will be junk autos. The council clerk sent out letters to the property owners about a week and a half ago, so hopefully we'll have them in attendance and have a great roundtable discussion. And then finally, I'd like to refer an issue to the Traffic Committee for a study of Harrison Street between Kibbe and Eureka, based on speed issues being brought up.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion second is to
That's it.
refer the issue of speeding on
I didn't
Harrison
know.
Avenue
I'm
between
sorry.
Kibbe and Eureka to the Traffic Commission.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Glenn?
Yes, I got a couple things here. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Snipke. We had opportunity today. We was dealing with a situation on Main Street there, the main off of 4th Street. And I was calling his office just that people had more questions. And all of a sudden, Mr. Snipke appeared up. And we had opportunity to explain to the people what was going on and everything. And I want to thank him for that. And he stayed about 35, 40 minutes and gave them a good, clear understanding what was wrong with their line there. And I appreciate him for that. Also, I want to thank Cornerstone Harvest Church. We had over 3,500 people out to the park, and they had a good time there. So I appreciate everything. I appreciate them cleaning everything up. I had an opportunity to go to the park on Sunday, and they still had a crew out there cleaning up. So everything looked just so good before I came to City Council tonight, and they said they will make sure to get everything clean. Also, we're going to be having, again, I will be going to get around this year. I will have a newspaper where you'll be meeting me at. I'll be at each corner. We're going to start from the 4th and 5th Street area, and then I'll work my way up through the 6th Ward now, and we'll be somewhere every day in the week. And I'll put my schedule out there. This is an annual thing I do every year, so we can make sure I get to meet the people a little bit more. No matter rain or what, I will be out there to see some of the things going on. I know some people asked about what we're going to do about the housing when they tore the houses down. You know, people complain about the houses. Now they complain about what's going to go there. And I'm hoping that we can find, we'll look into some things there, and we'll be talking to the Valentine Group, Habitat, Humanity, and talk to them a little bit. 'Cause I know some folks saying, you know, you knock 3 houses down. We know there's going to be a lot there. It'd be something that'd be expensive on the city. But we're hoping that we get to see some families want to get some houses built in some of the areas, though. And I'm excited about some of the houses getting torn down, you know, because some of them been up so long. And a lot of people in the neighborhood is very excited about it. So we hope we'll look at that phase when it comes, and that's something we're going to be researching and looking into. Also, I want to thank all the folks that helped out the softball team 4th of July. Thank you guys so much. It's rain, but we got the game in, and it keeps me excited. And thank you guys so much for helping out with that. I don't know who the guy was who made a phone call, and I just talked about it at Walmart there. Talked to a young lady about she needed somewhere to stay. She was home with 3 kids. And someone at Walmart's overheard me talking, and they gave her a place to stay for a couple months. Thank you so much. And I don't know your name, but it's good that we have good folks out there, you know, like that. And it just made me so excited about that people, we got great people in our city that want to help the needy people out. And, you know, no matter what the circumstance was, but these kids was homeless. So I was excited about that. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Ms. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. President. A note on the Westgate Neighborhood Association will be meeting Sunday night on July 21st at 6:30 at their normal meeting place at Chamberlain Huck Reedy. And the speaker will be Christine Pleva from the Visitors and Convention Bureau. And secondly, I would like to call a meeting of the HR Human Resource Committee for July 29th at 5:30, and this is regarding update and reviewing the civil service process for the first 6 months of this year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Give me a second.
Thank you, Ms. Townsend. Mr. Niebuhr?
Yeah, just a few items this evening. First, had a chance a few weeks ago to go through the renovated building across the street of the Childers, now named Childers Media Group, and just wanted to congratulate Matt and his folks over there on just a tremendous job. If you have not had the opportunity to see the inside of the building, I recommend that you do so. What a great renovation of an old building in the downtown area. And certainly, we talk about it all the time, but just another great investment in our downtown. And I think it really can show some people what they can do with the structures we have down here. Second of all, I'd be remiss, I don't recall mentioning this at the last meeting. If I did, I apologize because I'm re-mentioning it, but when it's family, it's family. I want to wish my nephew Braden good luck. He will be representing Lima on July the 27th in Akron for the All-American Soapbox Derby. It's been a while since Nieper family members made it to Akron, so we're especially proud of that this year. The third item, I was just going to, we seem to have a difficult time here. I know we went through this with the Vine Street underpass and what our stance, procedure, policy on memorializing famous citizens of this community would be going forward. We don't want to tie ourselves into this, well, then who do we recognize and who don't we recognize? But I do think, as Joe Henderson was, I think Phyllis Diller certainly is one of the most well-known folks to emerge from this community. And while I always get troubled with the fact that most of these people, they leave here and they become famous and then they never come back or never heard from again, I do certainly think that one way to maybe guilt them into coming back and investing in this community is to start to recognize some of these people and to give, most of all, the folks in this community some role models to say that, you know what, there are some pretty impressive people that have emerged from this community, and they're people we can look up to, and that we ourselves can do it. So I am going to make the request that we, for a resolution to name July 17th Phyllis Diller Day.
Second. The motion and the second is to have the law director prepare, or the clerk or the law director, cover all the bases, prepare a resolution designating, or I should say, the proper legislation to designate July 17th as Phyllis Diller Day. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, I assume that's intended on a annual going forward basis.
That's why I left it as the proper legislation as opposed to whether it's resolution or ordinance. Is that the intent of your motion?
Well, that was the intent of my
going forward
motion. I
basis?
assume that was, given the fact that we talked about potentially hosting a annual celebration around it, I believed it was the request that be considered an annual going forward.
Okay. Tony? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries.
That's everything.
All right, Mr. Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to first wish my oldest daughter, Jessica, happy birthday. I told her I'd do that. I want to thank the Chair of the Traffic Commission for the change of signage on the Market and Jackson Street for better safety of the kids. I don't know if anybody's seen it. If you haven't seen it, I don't know how you didn't see it because it's so bright. But it's really, really nice. I thank you again for that. I would also like at this time to thank the mayor of our city, Mr. Berger. He came and helped us celebrate the Ohio Association of Beauticians' 75th anniversary with the proclamation. And about 5 hours ago, I was reelected as second vice president for the entire state of Ohio with the oldest minority organization that exists in the state of Ohio. So I don't take that very lightly at all. It's a busy job, but it's a rewarding job. The other thing that I would like to say is I want to thank Mr. Nieper and Miss Adams and Mr. Glenn, all three have stopped by my salon and congratulated me. And I thought I did a pretty good job renovating also, buddy.
Sorry.
But I do want to thank them. The chief of fire department has been by, and I thank that. I appreciate your support. I got so many here. The Bradfield Center, me and a gentleman by the name of Pilot Bradley, many of you may have read about it in the paper. We were under instruction of great teachers like Fred Weimer and Mr. Chevron, and Jim Lehman, and Mr. Krauskup. And last year's Labor Day, we put a group of kids together, and within 2 weeks, these gentlemen never had a clue on how to play, read, write music. And within 2 weeks, we were able to practice with them about 5 or 6 times, put together a drum line with borrowed pieces of instruments, and we won. And since then, we have been practicing literally on practice pads and on the back of chairs, and these kids have never stopped coming. And it's countywide. Our focus was inner city youth to give them something to do. But I just want to thank the Lima News for that wonderful article that they wrote, and also invite any youth that is going into the 5th grade up until senior in high school. You are welcome to come on the first and third Tuesday of each month, tomorrow at 6 p.m. and be a part of the high octane drum line. This gives these kids something to do in a positive manner. They teach music comp, music theory, and we have a really, really good time. So keep that in mind. If you know of anyone that wants to receive lessons, they need to be there tomorrow at 6. I also want to thank, I don't know if she wants me to say her name, but I'm going to say it, Miss Adams. We kind of had a tag team partnership today, and it should always be like that. I was in a meeting. A gentleman thought that I was his councilman. I took the message as if I was, because we all work for the entire city. I immediately called Miss Adams. She just happened to be in the area, and everything worked out smooth. And after the meeting, I turned down this street, forgetting that was the same street that the message was on. And the lady was like, she already been here. So I was like, oh yeah. So, but it was really good that worked out. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah.
Also, she has came on board with me. There is a gentleman putting a lot of graffiti around the city, and the tag is WRENCH. Okay, Reach or however he wants to say his name, but it's everywhere. Once the LPD department lets me know that is the right person, we have an reward for you, for the individual that gives the name of this individual. It has to stop. It's from south side, east side, north side, west side. He has it throughout the city. And I believe it's one individual because the tag is exactly alike everywhere you go. Okay. I really want to put that out. I hope the media gets a hold of this and puts it out there. But if anyone knows who's doing this, please come forward and let the authorities know. And I'm sure they'll let me know. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Mr. Tevin?
I just want to encourage folks to come to the Community and Economic Development Committee meeting on the 22nd to continue the discussion on junk autos. What the discussion so far, and I really appreciate the work of the committee, what the discussion so far are leading to is ways to improve how we deal with junk autos in the city to allow us to deal with them more quickly. And the issue of involving the landlords up front, as we did in the Utilities Committee with the billing issue, really gives an opportunity for those that have a vested interest to help formulate the solution. So I look forward to the participation, and I hope that there is very good attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tevin. I just have one thing, and that is I'm going to make a motion that the absence and salary of Councilor McLean be approved.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. That's all I have.
Mr. President,
Ms. Townsend.
I move that Lima City Council adjourn until August 5th at 7 p.m. in these chambers.
Second.
The motion and the second is for Lima City Council to adjourn until August 5th at 7 p.m. in these chambers. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Council is adjourned.